There's a time in my life that I wish I could erase, but I know I can't. It feels like a part of me I'd rather not have to remember, a part of my past I'd love to forget. But the more I try to push it away, the more it clings to me, like a shadow I can't outrun. The truth is, the harder I try to avoid it, the more I realize how essential it is to face it, because it shaped me. The woman I am today was formed in part by the choices I made back then, and as painful as it is to admit, those choices were born from my brokenness. And until I confront that, until I stop running from it, I can't fully heal, I can't fully move on. I wasn't always like that. I wasn't always so closed off, so defensive, so full of anger. I think I've always been someone who wanted to be loved, to be seen, to be understood. But somewhere along the way, I lost my ability to trust. I lost the belief that people could see me for who I was, the messy, complicated parts of me, and still love me anyway. And instead of confronting that loss, I ran from it. I built walls. I pushed people away. I rejected love, even when it was offered to me, because I couldn't let myself believe I deserved it. I think part of it was that I felt like if I let anyone close enough, they'd see the cracks, the parts of me that weren't perfect, the parts I hadn't figured out yet. And I couldn't bear for anyone to see that, because if they did, they might leave. They might see me as broken, as unworthy, and I couldn't bear the thought of that kind of rejection. So I kept everyone at arm's length. I shut people out, convinced myself that I was doing it to protect myself, that it was safer this way. I could keep control. I could keep from getting hurt. But the truth was, the more I shut people out, the more I hurt them. And that's what makes this so difficult to admit. It's one thing to be hurt, to feel abandoned, to feel misunderstood. But it's something else entirely to realize that you were the one pushing people away, that you were the one driving them out of your life because you couldn't deal with your own fear. I didn't even realize I was doing it at the time. It felt like self-preservation, but it wasn't. It was self-sabotage. I remember times when someone would try to get close, try to offer me love or support, and I would pull away, or worse, I'd lash out. I'd say things I didn't mean, harsh words, cold responses, shutting them down before they even had a chance to get through. And even in the midst of it, I could feel a small part of me crying out, wanting to let them in, wanting to stop pushing them away, but I couldn't. I didn't know how. The fear was too strong. The anger, the grief, the shame, they all got in the way, and I couldn't see a way through. I've spent a lot of time wondering why I did that, why I couldn't just let people love me when I needed it most. And what I've come to realize is that I was broken, but I didn't know how to heal. I thought that being vulnerable meant exposing myself to more pain, and I couldn't bear the thought of that. The fear of being hurt again was too much for me to handle, so I chose isolation. I chose distance. And in doing that, I isolated the very people who could have helped me heal. I pushed away the ones who loved me, who wanted to be there for me. And in the end, I left myself with no one but my own unresolved pain. I've thought a lot about the consequences of my actions, about the ways I pushed people out of my life and caused them pain in the process. And honestly, it's one of the hardest things I've ever had to face. To realize that the damage I caused wasn't just the result of what happened to me, but also the result of how I reacted to it. I hurt people, not because I didn't love them, but because I didn't know how to love myself. I didn't know how to trust myself enough to allow myself to be loved. I didn't trust anyone to see the broken pieces of me and not walk away. The hardest part, the part that really stings, is knowing that the people I hurt didn't deserve it. They didn't deserve to be treated that way, to feel rejected, to feel unimportant. And it's hard to come to terms with the fact that no matter how much I regret it now, I can't take that back. The words I said, the coldness I showed, the times I turned my back when they needed me, those things are done. And as much as I wish I could undo them, I can't. What I can do, though, is take responsibility for them. I can look back and say, I was wrong. I didn't know better, but I know better now. I wish I could have been different, but I can only be who I am now and make the choices that move me forward. I've had to come to terms with the fact that regret alone isn't enough. Feeling sorry for what I've done doesn't change anything. The true work comes from learning from it, actively choosing to do better, to be better. That's the hard part. It's not enough to say, I'm sorry, and leave it at that. I have to make changes. I have to be more open. I have to be more patient, more understanding, more willing to lean into vulnerability, even when it terrifies me. Because if I'm being honest, it still does. I still feel the pull of those old patterns, those walls, that fear of letting people in, but now I can see them for what they are, and I can choose to break them down, brick by brick. There's a kind of peace in knowing that change is possible, that healing is possible, that I'm not defined by my past mistakes, but by my willingness to learn from them. But there's also a kind of sadness in realizing that the past is still with me, that the people I've hurt may never fully understand my regret, may never fully forgive me for the ways I pushed them away. And I can't change that. I can't go back and undo what I've done, but I can honor it. I can sit with that sadness, with that regret, and allow it to be part of my journey. I can accept that part of me, the part that made those mistakes, and try to be a better person now. I know I'll never be perfect. I'll never get everything right. But what I can do, what I'm doing, is trying to learn how to love more freely, to trust more openly, to let people see me. Not the version of myself I think I should be, but the real, vulnerable, sometimes broken version of me. And that's where the real healing begins. Not in the absence of pain, but in the willingness to face it. Not in running from the past, but in accepting it as a part of who I am, and choosing to move forward anyway. I'm still learning, still growing, and I still have a long way to go. But what I've realized is that every day is an opportunity to be a better version of myself. And while I can't change the past, I can choose to make better choices in the future. I can choose to be the person I wish I had been all along, and trust that in doing so, I'll build a life of healing and love, not just for others, but for myself. And maybe that's the greatest gift I can give to myself. The grace to make mistakes, the strength to learn from them, and the courage to keep moving forward, one day at a time.